Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Dona Kappmeyer, and I'm the CEO and firm owner of Capital Game Plan Consulting and Action Coach in South Texas. And I am going to be your host for today. I am very excited about having our special guest, Connor Smith, on our show. Connor is the owner of Locker Room Finance. Today, we're going to speak with Connor about his journey to get to where he's at today and the challenges and successes of owning and operating a business. If this is the first time on our channel, please be sure to like and subscribe so that you can get notified when we publish new content. Well, Connor, welcome to the show. It's great to finally have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. It's been a little while. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because what you're doing is extremely unique and extremely needed. So without
Thank
further
you.
ado, yes, you're welcome. So let's just talk about how did you get, let's talk about what the business is,
Okay.
and then how did you get into it?
So the business Locker Room Finance is a financial education company that I built specifically for collegiate student athletes. So I travel around to different universities presenting usually team by team by team on financial education topics that could be credit, budgeting, investing, taxes, whatever the school would like me to talk about. And then I provide one-on-one meetings to the student athletes, free to the athletes, all paid for by the school. And then we have a budgeting app, a very simple to use money management app to help the athletes develop some awareness and intentionality around their money. And so that's what I'm currently doing. I've been full time with this for about 18 months. And getting into it, we can go back to when I graduated college. I was a music education major. I was always in the marching band. I was drum major of the Spirit of San Antonio at UTSA here in San Antonio. And band was my life, and it always was. And I graduated, became a middle school band director. It was very fun. And then through my own financial awakening and learning all the things that no one ever taught me, I realized that most people don't know anything about money. And that's not really anyone's fault. It's just kind of weird to talk about. And some people get uncomfortable around it. And no one really teaches us it in school. And so I figuring out everything on my own and the connections I had through UTSA, there were student athletes that would graduate and ask me for help. I was pretty public about my student loan journey. I paid off 22,000 in about 3.5 months right after college. My motivation was I wanted to get married, and my girlfriend, now wife, we agreed I'll pay off my loans and then I'll buy a ring and then we'll move on. And so that was the motivation. And in all of that, people started asking questions about how I did some things. And I started sharing mainly with student athletes, weirdly enough, just because I knew several of them. And eventually I asked a question and I said, I thought the school provided some resources around financial education for the athletes because the NCAA loves to promote, guaranteed financial literacy education for all of our, it's like, hey, is that really happening? And every school has to do something, but most schools weren't doing anything that actually resonated with their student athletes. The word that kept coming up was resonate. Like someone would come in, the presentation would be good, but it didn't really hit home. The athletes didn't really enjoy it. They didn't love it. And so they didn't really benefit from that. And so to fast forward us to where we are now, the short version of it is I reached out to UTSA, offered to do it for free in exchange for them helping me figure out how to make this truly impactful for the athletes. And I did that for 3 semesters. And now I've been full time with it for 3 semesters, helping other schools as well.
That is incredible. So taking
Thank
a
you.
challenge that people had the perception that was being handled, but
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't, and then now you're really incorporating that into the school system.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
UTSA was that launch grant, and so plug for runners, right? Go runners, yay!
Absolutely.
All day, every day, and
Baseball team
twice
is
on
doing
Sunday.
great right now. We love the baseball team.
That is right. So, ideal customer are student athletes. Is there a particular kind of student athlete that you are after? And now this is expanded beyond UTSA. So, who is your ideal student athlete, or who is your ideal client as it relates
Mm-hmm.
to the school system?
So ideal customer, I don't call the student athletes my customers. The universities are the clients. They are the customers. Everything that I do, at least for today, is free to the student athletes.
Okay.
And so when we say ideal, it would be any school that has a little bit of funds in the student athlete development bucket to
Okay.
bring in speakers like myself. A lot of schools opt for free resources through corporate partnerships or local financial advisors that are friends of the program, and those are very good in some cases, but often it doesn't hit home as much as a program like mine would. And that's what a lot of the schools I talk to say is that it's been okay, but it hasn't been great. And so my ideal client would be any school that wants to provide great resources for their student athletes and not just check a box and do what the NCAA says that they have to do. And so that's been everything from 2 weeks ago was the University of Texas, and in 3 weeks from now, it'll be the University of the Incarnate Word. So two very different institutions. I've
Yeah.
worked with schools in California, schools in the SEC. I'll be having a few fun conversations soon about some other big conferences, but I am not after the SEC football team or men's basketball team. I am very passionate about serving every student athlete, any place, anywhere, because I believe that the universities have a department called student athlete development, and it's not called um, high dollar NIL athlete development. And so when I go in and I partner with the university, I'll present team by team, ideally to every single athlete that they have on campus. And the conversations might be different. If we're in a high dollar NIL room, we might say a few different things than if we're in a predominantly walk on kind of a sport, a non scholarship sport. But at the end of the day, I am very passionate about financial education for everyone. My niche just happens to be student athletes because that's a really fun pocket of the world that I've kind of fallen in love with.
Oh my goodness. And you hear so often. So you're starting at the ground level because then you hear like at the professional level, right? About how they're making all this money and then they're
Mm-hmm.
broke, right?
Yes.
So you coming in early, right, before they get to that level. And now it's a little bit different, right, with the NIL, but you're
Mm-hmm.
able to really influence them and really have them take a better path early on in their career rather than losing all their money late in life when they're into their season or into their
Yes, ma'am.
career. My goodness.
That would be the goal to
Yeah.
inspire them in a way that they would be proactive and feel empowered to make the right decision with their money. Not that I always tell athletes, like, I'm not the guy to tell you to never have fun with your money. Like, I want you to enjoy the
Hmm.
resources that you've been blessed with, but we just have to do it in an order that makes sense and be sure that we're not spending money on the things we want before we take care of the things we need, and that we're actively engaged in the financial planning process.
Beautiful. So let's dive in a little bit more on that side of it. What
Mm-hmm.
do you provide? What does that look like as far as those conversations that you're having with those student athletes?
So it starts with a presentation. So once the school has agreed to bring me out, I'll be
Okay.
there for 2 to 4 days. And in that span, I tell the school, I am here to work. So as many athletes, as many presentations as we need to impact as many student athletes as we can while I'm on campus. And so typically that we go team by team, which is a different model. It's a new version. Traditionally, it would be 450 athletes all at one time, one speaker, 60 minutes, we're done. We did financial education and we leave.
Hmm.
A different model would be like a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior thing, which is a little more impactful because you're potentially targeting them by their age group. But in that age group situation, it's assuming that a senior remembers the budgeting conversation they had as a freshman, and also that there's no freshmen that want to talk about investing in post grad planning. And so it's a little challenging that way. So what I
Hmm.
do team by team by team, athletes are in their own space with their own people, and I can speak to them as a gymnast, as a rower, as a football player, instead of making it more generic for an entire student athlete audience. So we'll do as many presentations as we can. The first time I'm on a campus, I do a presentation called Winning with Money, and it's about credit, taxes, investing, but all centered around you're in charge of this and how do you actually make a plan for your money. People call it budgeting. I call it planning because people hear budgeting and they think, I can't spend money and it's restrictive. And so I've been
Yes.
intentional about not using that word, even though my wife and I, we have a budget meeting every single month and we use a budgeting app, but I use the word plan. And so I'll do that, the presentation. At the end of the presentation, and sometimes the presentation is all about investing or all about credit.
Okay.
At the end of the presentation, athletes scan a QR code, and if they want to book 30 minutes with me one on one, they can do that while I'm on campus, sometimes virtually for a few days after I leave the campus. I'm not their agent, I'm not their financial advisor, I'm not trying to manage their money. Totally free to the athletes. I have nothing to sell them. I just want them to get the best out of me being on their campus. And I always use the analogy of a soccer camp. One coach and 300 soccer players would be a great experience if it's a great coach. but one coach and one soccer player, it's just a different thing. You can
Mhm.
focus on your own life, your own money. You can ask questions that you wouldn't ask in front of a group. And so the third thing would be the budgeting app that athletes can use, the planning app that athletes can use. So we present to them in a way that's engaging, specific to their team, their situation. They have the option to meet with me one on one, which usually when I'm on a campus, it the schedule fills up. There's usually not more than one or two spots that don't get selected for the one on ones. And then after I leave and I maybe don't go back for 6 or 12 months, they have a resource on their phone that's simple and easy to use. And we're actually developing right now to make it simpler and easier to use and more impactful so that when I'm gone, I mean, they follow me on Instagram, we chat sometimes on there, but ideally it would be that app would be a resource for the athletes that think it's appropriate for them, that they would be able to use that and benefit themselves financially.
That's fantastic. So, is there anybody else playing in the space that you're playing in right now?
There are a few. The
Okay.
main, the I guess I don't really think I have competition. It's me versus myself, and it's me trying to provide the best resources that I can anywhere that wants to have me. I'm really grateful for the schools that bring me out and their decision to do that. My biggest competition on paper would be local credit unions, financial advisors in certain communities, because they often have very large scale partnerships. I mean,
Hmm.
usually the football stadium is named after something credit union, and so that credit union has sometimes what they call exclusive rights to things like this. So
Hmm.
some contracts with those are written that if anyone's talking to your student athletes about money, it's going to be through us or it's going to be us or sponsored by us. And so I am not that. So universities that I work with, they kind of have to step aside from that. Not in a I'm better or worse than them, but it's a different offering. You usually won't find a credit union or a bank that wants to do 14 presentations in 3 days from 4 to 8 p.m. every single day and stay on campus to provide one-on-one resources. Like that's not their job. Their job is to be a financial institution. And so I'll come alongside them. And if there's an athlete at, I was working at Texas recently and UFCU is their partner. If an athlete needs a savings account, we kind of lead them to the university partners and we kind of can come alongside each other like that. And there are a few other people building businesses similar to mine that are out there. And I'm very happy for them. I'm cheering them on. I don't know any of them personally, but there are too many student athletes in the country for me to speak to myself. And so I think that we're all on the same team of providing resources for these student athletes that are unique and customized to their life as a student athlete.
Well said. It's that, we're so conditioned to have a scarcity mindset when there's really so much out there. There's so much abundance and
Mm-hmm,
opportunity. It's just a matter of going out there and getting it and knowing that there's plenty for everybody. So I really like the way that you said that.
mm-hmm.
What kind of feedback are you getting? You're doing these presentations, you're doing these one-on-ones. What kind of feedback are you getting from those student athletes?
If you go to lockerroomfinance.com, click on a tab that says impact, it's all there. I've worked with 9 schools now. I've presented to over 3,200 student athletes, over 115 presentations, and I always send impact reports to the schools, and I take that impact report and I just customize it from a website so that people can read through that if they're thinking about hiring me. The most common ones are, man, this was actually enjoyable. Like a lot of people, they don't want to go to my presentation the first time because it's a mandatory meeting that their coach says you have to go to this. And there are lots of mandatory meetings, alcohol education, sexual violence prevention, things like that. And so they come in and they see this as, oh, another thing that I have to do. And they're going to talk kind of boring and generic. And then when they leave comments that say, man, this was actually so much fun. I'm so glad we were here. My team Snapchat was popping off after because we all learned so much. Like that's the kind of feedback that we get. And then the other most common is something along the lines of X person has tried to teach me this before, but it never made sense until today. And that X person is usually dad, mom, high school teacher doing economics that tried to instill 50, 30, 20 budgeting principles or something. And so I've been very grateful that athletes usually have a good time with my presentations, and it's all centered around they enjoy it, and I can explain financial concepts in a way that actually makes sense to them, and it doesn't feel too high level, too confusing because money can be a little complicated. And so my job is to take some big picture financial concepts like investing and credit scores and break it down in a way that makes sense to these student athletes.
No, well said. You are literally on their playing field, and right, and that you can relate to them. It's so important because some folks,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you get family members and others that might be a little bit older, and I'm not calling that out, but
Yes.
sometimes, right,
Yeah.
it's coming from a different perspective, and you've got these filters already built into saying, okay, mom, okay,
Yeah.
dad, right, okay, I've heard this before, but you're not in that position, right? You're on
Right.
that same playing field, so it makes it easier for them. And when you make it fun, oh my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about, right? How do you make these kinds of things entertaining? Because they relax a little bit and like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
That
And
was
I
actually kind of cool.
today I'm 28 years old and I graduated college at 22. I knew nothing about money. And so the past 6 years I've learned things in a way that makes sense to me. And that's through lots of podcasts and books and courses and everything like that. But I just the my knowledge around money is no older than 6 years old. Aside from having a job at Chick-fil-A in high school and spending all my money on clothes and shoes. Like that's what money was for me. And so the past 6 years learning all of this and being able to for lack of a better word, regurgitate that to these student athletes
Hmm.
is it's a blessing for me to be able to do that because I haven't spent 15 years on Wall Street like a lot of financial education presenters might have. And not that's a bad thing for them. I just come from a different place where I have a very solid financial education today, but I didn't 6 years ago. And I've spent most of my time being a leader and a public speaker, and I've had some really cool opportunities around that. So I know how to, I've developed skills around engaging an audience and things like that.
Well said. And I want to probe a little bit further in that because one, you had to do two things. One, you had to learn the business and the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Two, then you had to start your own business. So let's talk a little about, if you could go into maybe one or two or three hurdles that you had to overcome. One, learning something new as well as now I'm starting a
Mm-hmm.
new business. What does
Mm-hmm.
that look like for you?
So by the end of 2023, I had figured out this is something I probably want to do, and I had started work with UTSA. I felt like my financial education was very strong, where I could start sharing with others. And then UTSA and I agreed to. I did it for free in exchange for them helping me to figure out how to make it the most impactful. But probably the first biggest hurdle, aside, because honestly, and I don't say this to brag, but getting UTSA as a free client was not hard. There were some things that were going on internally with them, and I kind of came in at the right time. And through my college experience, I knew a lot of people in athletics. And so the person I was meeting with to discuss, hey, can I do this for y'all? Was someone that I would sit with at baseball games. And the athletic director's son would sit next to me at games. And like, I knew a lot of people around there. And so getting them as a client was not too difficult because it was free and I knew a lot of people. The next client was very, very difficult. And it ended up kind of being the University of Incarnate Word, kind of being the University of Arkansas, which was a crazy big win for me. I decided to go full time the spring of 2024, and so I was a band director, and I started saving a bunch of money. And my wife and I agreed. We prayed a lot, and we said, "This is what we're going to try to do." So we saved enough money that I could try this for 12 months, not make any money, and then go do something else in my life. And about 2 months into full time, the University Incarnate Word said, "Yeah, sure, you can come out and do something." And I maybe misunderstood. I kind of thought it was a paid agreement. It turned out to be more of a trial for a paid
Mm.
agreement. And so the trial went well. And looking back on it, I did okay, but it's not as good as what I do today. But it went well. And that led to his name is J.R. Pulito, and he used to work at the University of Arkansas with a guy named Justin Johnson. And I had reached out to Arkansas a few times, and he was gracious and at least responded to me, which most people don't, and that's just part of business. And the day after I did the free trial at UIW, then the University of Arkansas called and said, "Hey, let's try it." And so I'm sure that they said some things to each other, and it was, "Hey, this was pretty good. You should give it a shot." But the unknown of where is my next client going to come from? How am I going to meet them? Should I really try to cold call? Should I really try and use my connections? The unknown has been difficult because even after that, after the University of Arkansas, I went another 9 months without another new client. And
Mm.
then it kind of started the ball started rolling. So after that, a 9 months from then, it was the summer of 2025, so last summer, and then I got to work with the University of Tennessee, and that led to another 8 clients between last summer and now, which has been really great. But the unknown, even today, I'm having this interview right now. I'm supposed to be at the University of somewhere, and it kind of happened, and then they backed out, and so maybe we're going to do it in the fall. And that is something that I'm not used to, but I'm very much okay with because I know that's just the way that business works, and it's a challenge, and it's like you said, the biggest hurdles it would be figuring out where the clients are going to come from and how often they're going to be. And then the other thing, and I'll be short winded on this,
Hmm.
is what is my maximum threshold? And so
Yeah.
my friend Brandon Taylor, he asked in our group chat, and he said, how many schools can you work with? And this was about a year and a half ago. And I told him the goal is to find out, which is kind of cool. Like it sounds fun. Like, yeah, go get them. But then when my wife and I talk, it's like, okay, but what is that? Is it two per month? Because I'm traveling to go to these places. I don't do anything virtually. I don't think that's as impactful as in person for what I do. And so is it two per month? Is it three per month? I definitely don't want to be gone too long. I mean, I have a wife, I have a dog, I have a house to take care of. And so the biggest hurdles would be where the client's coming from and then trying to manage how much do I do before growing? Because I mean, right now it's just me, and I'm
Hmm.
sure we'll talk about growth here in a little bit at some
Hmm.
time. But right now, those would be my biggest hurdles: is deciding how much is too much.
Yeah, and it's right. In the early phases, it's such you don't know, and it just takes a while, and then all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
momentum is going to shift, and then things are going to start coming at you, and then at some point, you're going to hit capacity, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be like, okay, now this is really rocking and rolling, and I need to look at expanding my team, and it
Yeah.
can't just be about me, especially if I want to have a significant impact, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
believe you want to have a significant impact and have a major footprint. And that's going
For
to
sure.
require some resources to help you do that.
Yeah, and we will get there. And I
Yeah.
have it's funny every time I work with a big school, I have an influx of 5 to 10 people in the financial world that want to connect and collaborate and see if there are opportunities. And I take all of the calls, and I'm very grateful to meet everyone. And I have a list now that I literally just add people's names to a list for someday if I need a California presenter, like someone that works with all my California schools and they do all the stuff. And we'll get there. We're not there yet, and it's going to be a very difficult thing for me to do because right now, and I'm sure many founders can relate to this, is that all the success has been through things that I do. Not that no one else can do what I do, but I'm the only one that has for locker room finance. And so letting someone else wear the logo and present, and especially being around money, and there's lots of Q&A in the types of presentations that I have. If anyone with a locker room finance logo on their chest anytime in the future answered a question incorrectly or led an athlete in a wrong way or tried to manipulate something for their own benefit, like I would I will be very protective over who I let wear the logo and how they present and what they do. And so that's something that I imagine I'll do in the next 2 to 5 years is have, I guess they would be called facilitators. But that'll be a very, I don't want to say difficult because it'll be a very challenging thing for me to do to set that up in a way that will be just as impactful as what we're doing now.
It's interesting because as an entrepreneur and starting your own business, nobody's going to have the amount of passion and the drive that you're going to have unless they are an owner. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the goal is to get them 80% there. If you can get them 80% there and they've got that level, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You really are. But what you're trying to do is right. You're very concerned about, I want to protect my brand. I
Right.
want to protect my reputation and make sure that whoever comes on my team can deliver those services as if I was there. It might
Mm-hmm.
be a little different, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
they can have their own style, they can have their own
Yeah.
flair, but yeah, right now I love hearing when that people are talking about me behind my back because so far
Mhm.
it's always been good. Like I had the opportunity to go to some schools because they posted on a forum that I'll probably never see, and they say, "Hey, I want some financial education and we want to do something different," and someone comments my name, and so I love that. And you're right, I'm
Nice.
very protective over the brand, which is easy when it's one person. not as easy when it's
Yeah.
2 or 4 or 12. But I love what you said about 80% there. That mentally, that will help me along the way, because you're right. No one will ever be 100%. And I mean, maybe we'll make someone else a partial owner someday in the future. But I think that's a good reframe for me, as if we can get them 80% there, and then 20%, we're just going to know that that's the founder magic or whatever that they call it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice reframe.
Very good. So let's go into a little bit more about your outlook. So where do you see this business 3 to 5 years out? What's that look like for you?
Continuing to partner with more schools, that's always the goal, serving more student athletes. um, I guess with the numbers that we're doing now, I project that I could impact about 20 schools per year
Okay.
in 2 to 3 day trips. And beyond that, we would need to grow. So I would think definitely 3 to 5 years in the future, my personal schedule will be packed to the point where we're starting to have facilitators. And then we're in some conversations right now with some conferences, and I would really love to see that pan out. I don't know if it will, and it's a little bit maybe bold of me to say it on this podcast. Like, I'm hoping that it will, but it hasn't happened yet. And so there is potentially a world where locker room finance collab with insert conference here, and we can serve an entire conference instead of going school by school by school. And so in the mid major and lower, the D2s, the FCS conferences, they don't have as much resources and funding allocated to student athlete development. So if a conference could step in and say, hey, we will fund locker room finance to come to any institution that wants it, I think there's a great opportunity there. 3 to 5 years, I think that the biggest thing is impact. And I haven't set a number on that, but if I've impacted about 3,200 athletes in 18 months, I would love to be in the tens of thousands number in
Okay.
by 5 years. I mean, if we're presenting to in a room with 10 to 20,000 athletes per year, I think that would be a fantastic goal. And then beyond that, potentially with the app or with other resources that we'll build out, impacting hundreds of thousands of athletes, and then building things to help them transition into what is life like after college. We tested a program last year. We call it the Wealth Club, and it was a every week for 6 weeks, we did a webinar basically about insurance and employer benefits and things like that. And it was good. There was 5 to 7 athletes that committed to that, and those athletes got a lot out of it. And this is just like the trajectory of locker room finance. My first sessions, there were 4 people in the room. There were 6 people in the room. There were 0 people in the room. But the people that were there got something out of it. And so we're probably going to transition the Wealth Club model into the word I come up with literally last night is adult money. And so you graduate and you go through a day or two seminar of adult money and what does it mean to have a 401k and how is that different than an IRA. And so definitely 5 years from now, I would love to be serving tens of thousands of athletes a year, as well as not holding their hand, but guiding them through how to navigate into adulthood, specifically with your money as you get a job, as you start a business, as you have more of a stable income.
Well, I truly believe that you are going to realize that and it's going to come to fruition for you. So,
Thank you.
what you're doing is incredible. With our listeners on the show, if there were one piece of advice you would give the business owners who are watching this, what would you give to them?
Be yourself, and if it's supposed to work, it will. I think. I mean, I my faith background influences a lot of things that I do and the things that I say, and I think that if God wants my business to succeed in a certain way, that it will. And if that's not the plan for my life, then I need to be okay with that. But I focus on planting seeds. I try and find fertile soil. I plant a seed, and if there's going to be rain, God is the one that can send it, and there's really nothing I can do to influence that. And so I've seen that time and time again with my business, like the University of Arkansas calling back and saying, hey, let's try it. I've planted all of those seeds. I've done what I can, and maybe it'll happen and maybe it won't. And if God chooses to send the rain, then I'm going to build a business that he would be proud of and that can impact people in a way that will make the world a better place. And so I
Oh my
think
goodness.
for anyone listening to this, I would encourage them, whatever their faith background is, but know that there are, I mean, for me, it's God. For a listener, it might be something else, but there are things that you can control and there are things you can't control. And I think knowing knowing what the things are that are out of my control has been very beneficial for my wife and I in growing this and trying to stay mentally regulated around all of this, because the emotions can be, man, the emotions are so high and then they are so low in an instant and then they are really high again. And so knowing that the result of my efforts is not the prize, but the journey is the prize, and laying the
Yeah.
foundation and doing what I can. I'm reading the book Shoe Dog right now from the creator of Nike, and he talks about the same thing. He's like, I can do all of these things, and there's this big crazy idea, and I want it to happen, and we will see what happens in the end. And so that would be, it's crazy to think that I'm giving business advice, I guess, to people right now because I'm so new. I'm a business infant right now. But I would say for anyone, business or employee or whatever, that's where I kind of fall with that, is knowing what you can do and knowing what is out of your control.
Yeah, well said, because so often we get sucked into trying to control those things that we can't. And if we can really separate that and really focus on what we can control, we'll be so much more effective.
Yeah, and I'm not perfect at this at all. There are even with the app that we're redesigning right now, I've tried to control a lot of things, and I know that I cannot. And that is part of my growth journey, and maybe that's why it's on my mind today.
Well, you are not alone in that space. Let me share that with you. That we all struggle with it,
Yeah,
and
for
it's a
sure.
daily thing. So don't beat yourself up too much over that.
Thank you.
Hey, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Instagram at Locker Room Finance. That's the best thing. If they want to send me an email, Connor, Conner, at lockerroomfinance.com. But I do most of my stuff is through social media right now on Instagram.
Very good. Well, Connor, thank you so much for sharing your story. What you're doing is amazing, and I really hope this audience that's watching this is going to benefit. I know that they will. This is the Business Spotlight series with Donna Kappmeyer along with Connor Smith from Locker Room Finance. Please be sure to like and subscribe so you can continue to see our great content. Connor, thank you so much for being on this show. This is awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation, and I hope the people, just like you said, I hope the people listening take something away from it.
I know they will. I know they
Thank
will.
you.
Great things to come. Bye for now.